Now, with that bonus lab under our belts, we're ready to get into switch roles and the SDM. And again, security fans, we're not using Security Device Manager, but rather the Switching Database Manager. Now, the great thing about multi-layer switches, one of the great things about them, is their ability to fit almost any role in your network. You might have a multi-layer switch that is actually going to spend most of its time routing. You may have other multi-layer switches that are primarily going to act as layer 2 switches and not do a lot of layer 3 actions. Well, by default, the resources are split up evenly, nicely. I wouldn't say exactly one third, one third, one third, but they're split up evenly and nicely between routing, switching, and security. Wouldn't it be great, though, if we had a multi-layer switch that was primarily going to route and we could allocate more of the system resources to routing? How about if we have that multi-layer switch we talked about that's primarily going to be a layer 2 switch? It's going to be mostly switching. How about making a larger MAC address table possible for such a multi-layer switch? Well, thanks to SDM, we can do just that on many Cisco switches, not all of them. Some switches have default source allocations that cannot be changed, but when they can be changed, SDM does it for us, frankly, with ease. Now, at the very end of the video before the lab, 2 videos back, when I mentioned the lead into SDM, I mentioned the word templates. And I know some of you cringed. You may still be cringed like, oh, templates, I don't want to work with those. These templates are as simple as they can be, and even better, they're already created. We don't even have to create them. We're going to see the SDM templates available on my particular switch here. And actually, I'll bring it up. I think I already have that up and running. Yep, you can see first off, SDM prefer is an incomplete command by itself, but SDM prefer can be ended with the words access, default, dual IPv4 and IPv6 with 3 hyphens, routing, and VLAN. And they're fairly self-explanatory, but I'm going to explain them here in a moment anyway. But notice the word bias here. When we say bias, we mean bias, and in one particular case, there's a lot of bias going on. If you go with access, this is a template that can come in handy if your MLS is running a whole lot of ACLs, because it will allocate resources to handle the maximum number of those. Now, default, that is the default template, and it treats all functions, I hate to say more or less equally, but let's say everybody's getting a slice of the pie, every process. They're not getting equal slices of the pie necessarily of our system resources, but everybody's got something to work with. Now, dual IPv4 and IPv6, I really even hate to explain this, but there is one thing I really want you to know about it. It's great for an MLS that's running dual stack. Sometimes you need to run version 4 and version 6 at the same time. Now, this template does not support everything in IP version 6. Including IP version 6 multicast, which it does not support. So you want to do your homework before you apply that template, and then you get into version 6 and say, some of this isn't working. Now, routing enhances the environment for IP version 4 unicast routing. Well, you got that right. And VLAN supports the CAM table's growth to contain the maximum number of unicast MAC addresses. Very important, and I'm going to hit you over the head with this one. This template disables hardware routing. So that's a pretty big decision you're making there, my friend. And to see the current template that you're running and the allocation settings, just run show SDM prefer. And it's going to tell you right there from the very top, the current template is desktop default template. The selected template optimizes the resources in the switch to support this level of features for 8 routed interfaces and 1024 VLANs. And then it even gives you, here's how many unicast MAC addresses you can have. Here's how many IP versions 4, IGMP groups and multicast routes you can have, and so forth. So let's say that we wanted to change that template. What do you want to change it to? Which one of our options? I think we'll go with VLAN first, because I want you to see this. And let's go ahead and do a conft and an SDM prefer, and we're going to go with VLAN bias. And there are no options there. So we hit it, and a second later we get a pretty big message. Changes to the running SDM preferences have been stored, but cannot take effect, and I know it's running a little bit off the screen, cannot take effect until the next reload. Use show SDM prefer to see which SDM preference is currently active. I would love to tell you there's a workaround for this, but there isn't. You know, it's like with OSPF. If you change certain things, certain value, you have to either reload the router or reload the processes, the OSPF processes. Here, you have to reload the router, and that's it. There's no option. So what I will do, actually, let's run show SDM prefer, just to prove that you can see it's still running desktop default. So if someone came to you and said, hey, you know, put SDM prefer VLAN or SDM prefer route in, and when I ran show SDM prefer, you know, I still had my previous template loaded. Well, my friend, don't call them any names, but just say, here's why. The switch did tell you what was going on. I'm going to pause the video, do a reload, and we'll check the template when it comes back up. All right, we're back after the reload. There was one line there that I wanted to show you when we ran show SDM prefer before the reload. And I mentioned, you know, someone could ask you about it, and hey, you know, you got to reload the switch before it's going to take effect. Well, actually, you're reminded of that at the bottom of the output. You know, on next reload template will be such and such template. So after the reload, and you can see all those here. Sorry about that. Went through our little power on self-tests, our posts. Got our warnings and a couple things to get started up with, and here we go. And I ran show SDM prefer, and the current template is desktop VLAN, so that's now been loaded. And notice the number of unicast MAC addresses here, 12K, that's a lot. Notice the number of IP version 4 unicast routes and PBR routes. Not very many. That's when a 0 disables something, all right. So let's go ahead and run SDM prefer again. And whoops, gotta get config mode. Sorry about that ding if you got one. And let's put routing in. And it's always going to take a second. And again, I do show SDM prefer. It's going to tell me that desktop VLAN is still loaded. And at the bottom, on next reload template will be desktop routing template. So I'm going to do the exact same thing as we did before so you can compare the two, and then we'll move on to another topic. And here we are after that reload. You can see I've already run show SDM prefer. And we have the current template is desktop routing template, which is the one we wanted at this point. And notice some differences here. First off, the number of unicast MAC addresses is cut down to 3K, where with our previous template, the VLAN template, it was at 12K. However, we're not totally eliminating unicast MAC addresses the way that VLAN template eliminated our unicast IP version 4 routes. You can see that all of a sudden we have 11K of 11,000 number of IPv4 unicast routes. So we've got just a little more routing going on with this particular template. So, you know, you have to work around with them a little bit, see the different values, what works best for your network. But the one thing you got to remember with them, beyond just, you know, creating them or applying them, I should say, they're already created, but you got to do a reload after you apply a new template. No way around it. That concludes our look at SDM and templates, and we've got just a few more fundamentals before we head to the VLAN section. So I'll see you on the next video, and we'll do some more of those.